Hey, what's going on, everybody? In this video, I want to talk about sort of a technical topic, but also a really common question that people have about their movies or commercials or any kind of media productions, which is how loud should I be mixing my dialogue? It's a super common question. There's not always a lot of content about it online, so hopefully this video is going to explain those things well enough for you to get along with what you're doing. The basic answer is you don't want your dialogue to clip. That's the number one thing. You don't want your dialogue clipping. You don't want to be seeing red, things being too loud, causing digital distortion. It's not a good thing. The reason why I start with that is because I have seen projects handed in the past, sometimes handed in as finished to the director, where the dialogue could be two characters sitting in a cafe scene calmly talking to one another, and the dialogue is so loud that it's clipping. And it's a 32-bit recording, which has maximum headroom, and it's clipping. You shouldn't be limiting your dialogue. Dialogue is compressed. We do compress the dialogue, but it sits at a certain dynamic range. And what I have here is kind of interesting. I have 3 shows taken off of Netflix, 3 different types of shows. And we're going to look at the waveforms, look at the dynamic range, look at the differences, and this should give you a good idea about what you should expect from your own media production. We measure loudness using LUFS. This is a metering plugin called Insight by a company called Isotope. Very affordable. There's a lot of these metering plugins available out there. LUFS is basically an average perceived loudness form of measurement. We use a negative number to signify it. And music that you hear on the radio is probably around -6, -10. It's very loud. It's limited, very compressed, very competitive loudness levels in pop tracks and hip hop tracks and everything like that. But when it comes to media productions, TV shows, movies, even television commercials, there's still dynamic range. Maybe less so in television commercials, but certainly in movies there is more dynamic range. So two characters talking calmly in a cafe, the LUFS level is probably going to be around -25, maybe -28. We're going to see here in this show, Jupiter's Legacy, there's a scene where there's like an overhead shot of these 2 kids playing in the intro scene, and check out the LUFS level as it comes in through the meter. Okay, so it's super ambient, right? There's all this music in the background. It's -32. It's really quiet. And even when the kids are up face to face with the camera and yelling at each other, here's the loudness at that point.
Ha! You missed! No, I didn't. Yes.
Okay, so they're yelling at each other. It's -26. Still, people might hand in dialogue to you where the dialogue is at -10. And it's just because a lot of people that are mixing sound for movies think that it's the same as mixing commercial music productions. It's not. It's just not in terms of loudness. And the reason for this, especially in this type of show, which is kind of modeled after, a Marvel superhero type cinematic experience, we can see these big spikes in loudness. See this huge waveform right here. And as you'd probably guess, this is for sound effects. Sound effects in this type of movie experience are supposed to be loud. This is where the limiting comes into play. This is where things are going to reach their peak loudness. Okay, so that's the alien or superhero, whatever, landing down on Earth. It's pretty funny to listen to this stuff without the actual video, but you can see the meters, -10. The momentary LUFS, this yellow number, -6.5. That's like an average time when it's at its peak loudness. That's sort of the numbers of commercial music productions. Very, very loud, at basically at the top range of loudness before things distort. That's where the limiting happens. So if you're making a movie where you have gunshots, you have car crashes, you have explosions, maybe someone shuts a door rather loudly, then at that point, yeah, you're going to have some limiting maybe in the production. But for the most part, I mean, things should be dynamic, meaning they should be sometimes softer as opposed to louder. Now, I will also say in this video real quick that there are times when people are mixing the sound for their movies to go to festival and they just want them to be louder. You just want to have a louder movie. Maybe you're planning on showing this movie right next to music videos at a festival. I don't know. It's tough. You go to these film festivals, and sometimes things are all over the place, especially if people are showing music videos side by side with dramatic movies. The loudness levels are going to be very different. I don't know how you manage for that. Maybe you have an alternative mix for those kinds of settings. But generally speaking, a movie should be dynamic. It should have soft moments and loud moments. It should have loud sound effects and moments where a dialogue is softer. We still compress the dialogue so that you can hear the words clearly, but in terms of their dynamic range, where they sit on that spectrum of loud and soft, dialogue is sort of in the middle, -25 to -22, -20 LUFS. We've got some other shows on here real quick you can check out. Subtle differences. Here's Sons of Sam. This is a serial killer documentary. These are so popular these days. It looks a little fatter. Look at the waveform. It's a little fatter. Kind of typical to more television productions that are more compressed. So it's more consistent. There are not as many loud peaks as more of a cinematic production. So, you can hear it in action.
Together a new version of the slayings. Reporter Maury Terry.
Joining me now is crime reporter Maury Terry.
Please welcome Maury Terry.
Yet one case continued to haunt him. It was one of the most terrifying crimes.
So -25, right in the medium range. These types of productions, documentary things, they have a lot of talking. So we try to keep things at sort of that medium level. That's kind of the idea with those things. There's still spikes. You can see right here, there's a spike. There's going to be loud moments. Maybe the music gets loud in certain parts of the documentary. But it's more televised style audio. It's more compressed, consistent dynamically. Not as many huge peaks as the cinematic experience. And then we've got another example down here. This is a dramatic show called Startup, also on Netflix. Definitely recommend checking out these shows if you're interested in this topic professionally or creatively or whatever. Here's another show. So the opening scene, he's running on a treadmill. That's what that sound is. -21.6, medium range. It's not -10, Things can be really, really soft, -30, like we saw in the beginning of the video. That makes sense in more ambient situations. Medium level is -20 to -26. Peak moments can be pretty much that optimum level of loudness, -10 LUFS. When you're working on your media production, you should be working with people that understand these things, because it can cause a lot of problems. If the dialogue is hard limited, it's probably actually going to cause distortion on a lot of home theater systems. Something that's not limited properly is going to have intersample peaks. It might have different problems, or you're handing it off to a composer that has to write a score to the temporary sound, and the dialogue is so loud that they're not really sure how to mix their music to it. Those are all things you have to keep in mind. So I wanted to make this video. I know it's a topic that is very technical, probably not that relevant to a lot of people, but to some people that are really having that question on their mind, hopefully this helps you with that. And if you like this content, there's a lot of content about audio, post-production, and music production on this channel. So hit the subscribe button if you enjoyed this video and got something out of it. And yeah, best of luck with whatever you're doing. Take it easy.